And here we are again on a Friday afternoon. How are you, Pat, this afternoon?
Lovely day, Jude. In fact, there's the sun shining here in God's country.
I'm
And
glad you've got out of bed because we usually do this in the morning, Pat, and I've been
I,
waiting for you
I,
for the last
I, I
four
was,
hours.
I was going to say tied up, but that even sounds a bit dodgy.
As long as you didn't take pleasure in it, Pat, it's okay.
Yeah. So, but I was tied up most of this morning, so we're a wee bit later again.
Okay, right. There's so many things to talk about. Let's start with the one that's been in the headlines all the time, and that is King Charles's visit to the northeastern colony.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think? He certainly made an impact, didn't he?
Oh, I love the one with the pen. Thank you.
I shouldn't laugh. All right, tell me the truth, Pat. How did you feel about that? Did you, like me, laugh at it? Or did you laugh and then feel a bit guilty, or what?
No, I didn't feel the least bit guilty. Jesus. Now, the only thing about it, I thought it was a wee bit unfair. Hey, here's the thing, Jude. Okay, I might have been a wee bit like the spoiled rich boy, but the other side of the story, here's a man whose mother's died, whose life has just been taken over. He has to go here, there, and everywhere. He hasn't had a chance to sit down and grieve. He hasn't had a chance to mourn. He hasn't had a chance to anything. It's just on one thing or another. And maybe just one more, and I'm going to use, fuck it, that pen, like maybe we should give, he's a human being too.
I agree.
I remember the time my mother died and my father died. Dude, I wouldn't have been up for going around the country and shaking people's hands and all this sort of, you have to be there, your Majesty, at such and such a time and all that bollocks, Dude, the man, and he was close to his mother, and forget about the royals, but
Well, that's what I felt too. I must say, I thought it showed a petulant side of Charles, sort of a nasty side that I'd never seen before, because he always comes across so gentle, and I kind of had sympathy for him. But that nasty side showing, it didn't do him any favors. In fact, it will be remembered after many other things are forgotten. But as you say, don't forget, his mother had died. No matter how old they are, still a wrench, and he was being, pillar to post. It was a political thing. I suppose he was involved in it.
Has he even got maybe a night's sleep since? Maybe he's just knackered.
Yeah, very likely. Yeah. Well, he probably getting drugs to make him sleep.
I haven't said that. I think the word you used there was perfect. Petulant.
Yeah. He does have a reputation for being that way,
Yeah.
Even when his mother, even at times when his mother isn't dead. So anyway, let's move from that to the question of there was some protester. I've heard the word Republican far more times.
I don't know. Dr. Collins, can I bring you back? Stick with the Northern Ireland visit for 1 minute, will you? Because I want to hear.
I'm sticking at it. Oh, okay.
No, but I want to hear your views. Remember the meeting where the new king met all the aligned Northern Ireland politicians, and our friend Alex Maskey introduced him to MICHEÁL O'Neill, Jeffrey Donaldson. You take it from there. What was your view?
Well, I had sort of mixed feelings. I'll tell you the truth. I'm such a right-wing, nasty person. I sort of recoiled a bit at the notion of Republicans, being so glad-handing of monarchy, which is, just directly contrary to them. And they always talk about the crown forces, that they're opposed to. But a moment's consideration let me see that actually was quite short-sighted. I tell you what I think. I think the Shinners have played a blinder.
I agree.
Total blinder. I mean, when you saw the guy who is the Speaker of the House, when you saw the woman who is the leader of, and was introduced before Jeffrey, who's taken, not just taking I was going to say the prince, but the king's hand, but taking his hand and clasping it with both hers. A very, very warm, very sort of loving, motherly sort of a thing to do. And they just were pitch perfect. Perfect. And even right down to the bit where he says, "Oh yes, we're a majority, but don't tell Jeffrey that."
Yeah. I have a friend who's a Republican who spent 15 years in jail, and apparently he's
I know who he is.
And he's less than happy in this. And I'm saying he's totally wrong. He's got this totally wrong. what Sinn Féin have done, I think, to use your term, absolute blinder. And I think unionists are going absolutely ape because this is not how it's supposed to play out. The script was that they were to be the top table, the invited guest, and basically Sinn Féin were to be the untouchables. What happens? Along comes Prince Charles, and
King Charles,
and he chats away to MICHEÁL O'Neill. It's obviously very warm and friendly. Oh, you are now the biggest party, aren't you? He says the king to MICHEÁL. Yes, we are indeed. He's sitting there. Who's doing the leading role in the introductions? Alex Maskey. Now, if the DUP had been in Stormont, there's a fair chance Alex Maskey wouldn't have been there. It could have been somebody else. Yeah. But the thing that really, the offshoot of all this was the fact that Sir Geoffrey was downplayed unbelievably. And dude, there's a massive message going out there. Charles did not even, he says, oh, I think I've seen you somewhere before. This is a man who's been on the Privy Council for 15 years. And Newton Emerson, I heard Newton Emerson and Gregory Campbell on RT yesterday evening. Yeah. And Newton Emerson, the columnist for the Irish Times, he said it was humiliating for Sir Geoffrey. So, Jude, what is, you flip a coin, 180 degrees type thing, and look what's happened.
Well, I have to say, I shouldn't be laughing at other people's pain, but it's hard not to. Poor Geoffrey. You see, another thing I think worked against him was the fact that MICHEÁL O'Neill is a woman. Yeah. And, a nice kind of a motherly figure almost. Yeah. Fairly glamorous mother, mind you, but a motherly figure. And she was. I think there was genuine sort of compassion
your mother's
there.
Dead, and
she understood for him. And then when it comes Geoffrey's turn, he bows deeply. Just wasn't the same thing at all.
But anyway, which was apparently the protocol was they were lined up as based on their votes. So Sinn Féin was in there first. So that's why she got all the attention. That was Jude, go on here. You were brought up in the north, not me. How do you think unionism is dealing with the fact that the new king seems much more at home with Sinn Féin than he did with the DUP? The fact that Sinn Féin have almost gone outreach, I don't know what's their outreach, that they've gone for the tactic of you get a lot more with honey than with vinegar. Are they setting themselves up for this is what it's going to be like in a new United Ireland? What's your take on it?
Well, they'll find it very, very hard because you know yourself that the whole state was established to keep the Fenians in the second place, and now they are in first place. So almost the whole purpose of the exercises that has been continued for a century is gone. What's the point if they're going to be, lording it over us?
Well, when you were growing up in the 50s, did you see that coming?
You kidding? You're kidding? I mean, that's stretched out.
I was reading this biography by a certain personality, and I was just sort of. But go ahead.
Yeah. I just no. That was you never thought of that. You tried to cope with, and in fact, most people around Derry did. Certainly, Derry boys that I knew cope with it by a shrug and a joke. At the injustice of things that were happening, like gerrymander and discrimination and so on. They tried to cope with it that way and tell jokes, but there was never any serious consideration of the state ever changing. That was the way it was, Anyway, right. The other thing that struck me about the Royals, before we move on to something else, is this question of objections people had, and they were talking about it on Talkback today, not about the objections or the protesters, but they were talking about not working and showing respect. Let's deal with that first of all.
Well, what do you mean that now?
Well, they said, people shouldn't, this guy was on, he was saying people shouldn't be, they should show respect by, closing their shops and so on as a mark of respect on the day of the funeral. And I began to think about it, and then they got a call from somebody who said, or an email from somebody who said, what about if I teach Pilates to a group outdoors, usually at 7 o'clock on Monday morning? Is it disrespectful for me to conduct that class? And I suddenly began to say to myself, what is disrespectful about working? And what is respectful about not working? And then I thought of Liz Truss's description of the British people as being a nation of slackers.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing, really. I'm not sure how you see it, that should everything close down? Should those who don't close down be sort of finger pointed at, or what do you think, Pat?
Jude, you know, son, you see, I'm an old traditional Irish Catholic in many ways. I believe in this thing of respect for the dead, and I don't like this thing of people slagging, you know, cheap shots.
Oh,
But
yeah.
hey, there's more, and the more I say of it, and I don't even mean this the way it's going to come across, but there's shades of North Korea here. There really are.
And
You
what?
know, this the great leader. So on Monday, Heathrow, an international airport, one of the biggest in the world. People flying to Australia, Africa, America, and Australia, anywhere else you can think of. Going to close down during the Queen's funeral. What else? There was someone. I was just watching the line. No critical programs. There've been 10 days to this stage, nearly of programs. Not one critical analysis of the Queen's reign. Not a one word of thing. A barrister, Paul, I think Paul's land or whatever. He had and running with a policeman with a piece of paper, shades of Russia, you know, against Putin. He was told if he put it up, he'd be arrested. There was a 22-year-old guy in Edinburgh who heckled Prince Andrew. He was arrested. There was another girl that said, "Not my king," and she was arrested. Okay, they were sort of, I think, de-arrested afterwards.
That's right, they de-arrested them. Yeah.
De-arrested. But you know, there's something very, very strange about it. It shows the limits of freedom of speech and democracy in Britain.
It certainly does.
And that's a far bigger issue, I think. Than, in other words, these people who are monarchists are allowed to tell the rest of us, oh no, this is not acceptable.
Well, I think
that sort of Kim Il-young sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think the Brits have any right to sneer after this at the North Koreans.
Pat, you're saying that as if this was unique. This isn't unique. There are certain. I mean, if you read Noam Chomsky, you say in Western societies you're allowed to criticize as much as you like, but only within very clear.
Confined, narrow.
Put a toe over that, and you will be destroyed. Yeah. And we know ourselves from maybe, well, I know from personal experience. There are certain things you cannot say.
Yeah.
You know, and if you say them, you'll be accused of. I don't know what you'll be accused of, but you're not allowed to speak freely about certain things.
Yeah.
And that was one of them. People saying, you know, I didn't elect you, or who elected you to Prince Charles. And that's the point to it. Was saying to Prince Charles, they weren't saying it about the coffin or anything. It was when Prince Charles was going past. Anyway, I just find it sort of, I ask myself this, and maybe you don't feel that it's a difficulty, but I do. What is there that's respectful about not working?
I don't know, Jude.
You know, Jude, I'm watching TV or whatever.
Well, what's TV? Should we all turn off our TVs as well? Here's the other thing, Jude. How do you laugh? It's not one of the greatest ironies. People who run food banks in Britain were asked to close down during the funeral. So in other words, somebody who might be desperate for someone to eat, you know, should show us. You know, it's like asking a starving man to eat less. You know, it's unbelievable.
You begin to wonder if they'd be giving us advice that if we watch the ceremonies, the funeral on Monday, that we should stand throughout it and take our hats off. You know, there used to be guys who would stand in their living rooms at the end of the day of TV. Do you remember when TV ended with the Queen? And the national anthem. They did it in the cinemas, you know. In the cinemas, at the end of the movie, they'd play God Save the Queen, and there used to be half the cinema would be standing forcefully upright, and the other half would be breaking their legs to get jumping over the top of them to get out. In a way, the logical conclusion of that, of course, is you should be standing to attention in your own house. It's sort of nuts. I think the woman did a good job. She was lived in the lap of luxury. Don't forget that. She did a good job within the confines of that role she had to play. She was good on Ireland. She was. She didn't change things radically, but she was good on Ireland. She brought in a new tone, I think. And the fruits of that tone were shown when MICHEÁl and Alex Maskell made that meeting.
Absolutely. But you know, the narrative is unbelievable. The narrative is that there should be no criticism of the royal family. There should be no analysis of their role. That there should be no protests. That freedom of speech should be curtailed. And you know, you sort of go, wait a minute, hey, Jesus, You sometimes and by the way, you're dead right. It doesn't come as a shock to me, but the reality of it comes as a shock when you see it in practice.
That's right. Because this is the first time that you would have read or heard people ask questioning the notion of monarchy. I
Yeah,
mean, for decades, that just wasn't a runner. Nobody
yeah.
even mentioned it or thought it maybe.
Hey, before we leave, Jude, quick question for you again. Do you think all this sort of stuff now might actually rebound? That people might start after 10 days of this sort of say, "What is this all about?"
In fact, I was thinking of people who take to the streets and barricades, and
Yeah,
there'd be petrol bombs. It is actually sucked, I think, but maybe the British
yeah.
people have a great appetite for this. I would have thought that the tedium is such over the whole 10 days that genuine sympathy would have watered down and become maybe even
All right, but what
hostility.
about as of today? It's a 14-hour wait to get to, and
Uh, Stop. But anyway, it's the British people's choice, and that's
right, okay,
so
we'll probably
good for
kick
them.
this.
Okay, so let's leave one royal figure and go to another royal figure, and that is Bertie Ahern. Of course,
Yes.
Bertie's not it's not royalty, but he's the next best thing, or was the next best thing within Fianna Fáil. And the question that's now being asked is, will Bertie come back and become a part of Fianna Fáil again? Because I didn't realise this, he was ejected from it, was he?
Oh, yes, 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 yes.
That was during
Yeah, I
the
remember
time
after that. Was it
why
the
was he
flood
ejected?
tribunal or something? Sorry, Jude. Sorry. Go
Why
ahead.
was he ejected? Why was he?
Well, after I think it was the flood payments to politicians tribunal,
Yeah.
Bertie had been so evasive and so, that he won money on the horses and he got a few lifts from friends and he was, despite the fact that he was Minister for Finance for a long time and that he was Taoiseach, that he never had a bank account, which some people thought very odd, and so on, and etc., etc., etc. And basically, Fianna Fáil, he became a liability because they sort of became a laughing stock. He was so good on the north that I think a lot of people in the north felt really bad about it. But there was another thing, though the Galway tent, he really poisoned the Fianna Fáil well because they could hardly accuse Sinn Féin or anybody else of corruption or whatever when all anybody had to say was, look, don't look closer to home. So he was removed by MICHEÁl Martin.
MICHEÁl Martin now says, though, that people are asking him what did they think about this, and he said, well, I'm saying as far as I'm concerned, it's 10 years on. So he's
But you see,
saying,
has been rehabilitated.
aye, that's right. It happens 10 years ago. It's an odd sort of way of looking at things, given the fact that he goes back 30 years, 40 years, 50 years if necessary to, whip the shinners for what happened in the north. So he's dumped for financial affairs and not having a bank account and getting a dig out. But do you think he's been doing genuinely good work? You mentioned it. He's doing genuinely good work in the north.
Yeah. What's that word? There's a word going through my head that I can't think. He's been sort of himself, not re-establishing, but there's a word which just escapes me now totally. But
reinvented.
I always reinvent himself. But in recent times, he has come on to do, on RT. He's been invited on for analysis about what's happening in the north. Yeah. And I hear him a couple of times saying, I still spend a hell of a lot of time up north. And I have to say this, Jude, he was far better on the north by some considerable distance than either MICHEÁl Martin or Leo Varadkar. And I mean that. Yeah. He seems to know what's going on. He understands what's going on. And he was very good. And I think he sort of, to a certain extent, he's no longer poisonous in the eyes of the electorate. So, and as well as that, at one stage, he was a real electoral asset. So he used to drink a couple of pints of Bass. He used to wear a parka jacket or something. And he was all, a man of the people. And in fairness to him, he didn't live a big life, didn't seem to live a big life. Yeah. And he was one of us. And maybe now they see him as an asset rather than a liability.
Well, you see, the question would be, they might see him as an asset. Well, yes, I could see they could see him as an asset. But again, that contempt and rage with Fianna Fáil and Bertie, it was very deep-seated at the time. Yeah. And I can't see it having died down over 10 years. I really can't.
Well, neither can I. But
you don't think that would be counteract the way it would be?
Yeah, but he's not going to come back in, as Taoiseach or anything like that.
Why would he join them again? I mean, what's in it for him?
I can't answer that. Don't know. But the thing about it was, he's done 10 years, and I think Fianna Fáil has got so out of touch of what's happening in the north. Well, there's get out in the touch what's happening in the south too. Like Sinn Féin, you said it the other day. If one poll said Sinn Féin was the most popular or biggest party, you'd say, well, yeah, okay. But it's now consistently the top party, and both the Republic and the North.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Maybe
yeah.
they see Bertie as blunting that.
Maybe, yes, that's right. You could say that. Yeah, that'd be an idea. But it's getting a bit desperate when you're pulling in, Taoiseach that were once the object of contempt and being rehabilitated, and now you hope that they'll save your skin.
That was the word I was looking for. Rehabilitated. That's it.
Yeah.
I couldn't.
Okay.
I was on a senior.
Let's go on to this interesting story from the Examiner. Where a 60, I think it's more than just the Examiner, I think it's Indo as well. A 66-year-old woman has had 50 batteries removed from her.
Hi, Jude, I didn't see that one. You're going to have to go.
Let me tell you.
You're going to have to go slow here.
This woman is 66, and it happened in St. Vincent's Hospital in Dublin. The surgeons removed a total of 46 batteries from her stomach, while, now I have to speak delicately here, while another 4 that were located in her colon were milked into the rectum and removed using an anal retractor and a long forceps.
Hey, Jude, batteries are absolutely poisonous.
How did she do it?
And what you're actually, if you go to a recycling centre, there's a special thing. You just can't throw them in with the common or ordinary garden muck.
Yeah,
you have to put them aside.
Yeah.
How do you swallow 46 batteries?
Some of them are AAA, but some of them are also, many of them are AA.
It was highly charged.
This poor woman must have been deeply disturbed. It was.
Dude, I don't know. I don't even know what to make of it. But the serious point is, I'm amazed she's still living, because the stuff that's on that acid and whatever is in batteries.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, God bless her. You know what I mean? God bless her.
That's right. I mean, if it's not fit to be left in a normal sort of general waste, has to be, got rid of separately, then what is it doing to the internal?
What's it doing to her insides?
Yeah. I have one other story here, but I'm sure you'll have one yourself, and that is that in Arnott's in Dublin, guess what? It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
You
Can you believe it?
That's Jude. What are we in September? And it's starting. And Jude, even today, I have to admit, doesn't even look like winter. It's a lovely day here. But Jesus, hey, that's ridiculous. Christmas already. And I think Rosanna Davison, and the farmer.
That's right. I don't know who is Rosanna Davison.
She is Christy Berg. The singer.
Oh yeah.
That's his daughter.
Oh, his daughter. I thought she was his daughter. Is he still with his wife, by the way?
Don't go there. He sues anybody that makes any comment about himself or his wife.
Well, he did sing. I'll have to hand it to him. He's a kind of he's an odd-looking guy, but I must say that song, "Lady in Red," and other songs he wrote were very good. I mean, really good songs.
He made a fortune out of them,
But there's a whole sort of backstory that sounds ridiculous.
Yes, that we really don't want to get into.
But Rosanna Davison then is a top model, and she's a daughter of theirs.
She won. Now, you said he's not looking at me for that. That never ceases to amaze me that he produced Rosanna Davison.
I hope you're not. I hope you're not implying anything.
It's not just me. She said she won Miss World. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Well, one other story, and this is a bit serious, and that is that the Taoiseach looked at a report he got from some independent body that was set up, looking at the question of how would we provide for support for people living longer and so on. Sort of a thoroughgoing thing. Where would we tax and raise the kind of funds that would be necessary for this? Apparently, the Taoiseach, Leo Varadkar, has said that he agrees with some of it, most of it even, but he says that some of it is just sounds like Sinn Féin propaganda or policy, and he will have no hand, act, or part in it. And the two parts that he objected to particularly were inheritance tax should be maintained at the present level, and tax on earnings, as he says, should be at the present level. He doesn't want them abolished or lowered or anything. And MICHEÁl Martin has been making sounds and saying, well, in fairness, we must take this report in the round. And, I'm sure that the Leo Varadkar would see it that way too, trying to make sounds that smooth over this big fissure that has suddenly opened up between the two. Do you think Leo is being hard-eyed and practical, or do you think he's being right-wing and looking after his buddies?
Jude, it's one of the stupidest comments you could possibly. This was a body set up by the government. This is no left-wing lefty. So it's a commission on taxation and welfare, and it's a government, and it's all the great and the good. And for Leo then to come out and say it sounds like it was lifted from the Sinn Féin manifesto, he does not tell you how much out of touch. Right, look at it either way. Either A, Sinn Féin have got it right on so many ways, which you can write, or that Leo, and no wonder they're losing the battle for the hearts and minds of the people of the Republic of Ireland, because they're out of touch with what people. These guys were not some trendy lefties. These are experts. They're guys who are sort of saying, what's the best taxation system? Should we go for the Scandinavian model? Should we go for the British model? Should we go for anything? And all this sort of stuff. So these people have had a look at it, and they've come back, and these are the recommendations. And Leo's reaction is to say, it looks like it was lifted from the Sinn Féin manifesto.
Well, he said some of it. Some of it, Pat.
Yeah, but Jude, it's just, that's the main point to come out of it. He says some of it looks like it was lifted from, what's that telling to? I think it's Professor Neve Murphy. She was the chair. Professor Neve something. I can't remember her second name. But anyway, Jude, she is no Sinn Féiner.
Well, you see, might it be that, all politicians, let's face it, all politicians say things with a mind to their electorate.
Yeah.
And could it well be that, these proposals to increase or maintain inheritance tax, to tax savings, that any interference with them would be something that the constituency that elects Leo and many of Fine Gael would be appalled by. So he's quickly making clear which side he's on.
Yeah. Well, we know what side Leo's on. He doesn't want any change to the taxation that looks after the more well-off end of the market. Let's get that clear. Yeah. Leo's not going to be looking, metaphorically speaking, for the vote on the Bog side or Shankill Road or the Falls Road. He's going to go for the Malone Road or the Culmore Road. So that sort of stuff. I don't think there's a lot of people in the sort of working class will be voting, well, of course, there's the political Fine Gael, but I'm talking about the ideologues. They certainly will not be voting for Leo. They'll be voting for the Labour Party or Sinn Féin.
Okay, we're running down to the last 3 minutes now, but just to ask you one last question. This was raised by, I don't know who raised it, but there was somebody made a suggestion that there could well be an election in the North, a general election. Have you heard that?
Yeah, well, if there's no return by the end of October, there has to be one under the law.
Do you think that's going to happen?
Jude, I think it's more likely. It's getting more likely. Now, after he was summoned, apparently, Sir Geoffrey had a meeting with the King. Yeah. And apparently, the Unionists must be, I'll rephrase that, the DUP must be increasingly under pressure. After his meeting with King Charles, he came out, and Geoffrey was seen to say, or heard to say, there has been movement from the EU. Now that's a change in position. I know, in other words, he's softening his position, because up until now we're not moving unless we get a complete reversal of the protocol. They have now seemed to have moved somewhat. So I don't know, Jude, what do you think?
Well, the question would revolve around one matter, and that would be, do the DUP want an election? How would that benefit them?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, and I think it wouldn't benefit them one bit. I think
Yeah.
they're in a bad shape. But then again, you see, they might think, well, if we don't pitch it in now, we're sort of leaking votes
Yeah.
in a way, and we could be even worse off if we leave it till later.
Well, did you see they went into the last election so bad? They were so, they were sort of the butt of so many brickbats that people sort of said, look, you've balls this up right, left, and centre. You've had 3 leaders in the space of whatever it was, 6 months.
Yeah.
You've got, you got conned by the Tory party. You got shafted by Boris. You are incompetent. You're fooled. And then along comes Jeffrey and says, unless we get the protocol sorted out, we were going to. And then comes the protocol bill introduced by Liz Truss, who's now I was going to say Taoiseach, who's now the Prime Minister. He's holding out maybe that she will be able to deliver something for him. And if she can, he can then go to the electorate and say, look, at we stuck to our guns. We're the party of principle, and we deliver. We've got a good deal for the unionist people now. Vote for us. I presume that's the thinking.
Well, I say maybe wishful thinking, because not too many people will have forgotten the fact that there was open warfare within the DUP not about a year ago. I mean, It was open warfare. Leaders toppled. They had 3 leaders within the space of, what was it, 6 weeks or something?
Something like 6 weeks. Yeah. After, before you go, did you see that where the Can Quarter referred to Mary Lou McDonald as the Taoiseach?
That's right. And oh no, he made a mistake. What he meant was that she was the first one to.
Yeah, but he referred and now Taoiseach.
But no, Bryn shouldn't. Yeah, you got it right. You got it right. I know it could happen to.
Thanks very much. I'm touched.
It could happen to a bishop, but it was a bad step. It's putting bad thoughts in people's heads.
Yeah, I would talk about maybe psychological thinking.
A Freudian slip. A Freudian slip. Okay,
yeah.
Pat. We'll talk to you again.
Good.
All the best.
Good luck, Jude.
Enjoy your weekend. Yeah.
And you.